Ladies and gentlemen, moderating the next session on accessible creativity, please welcome to the stage Becky Anderson, Managing Editor of CNN Abu Dhabi and host of CNN's Emmy Award-winning Connect the World.
Hello. Welcome to those of you who are joining us here in the audience and to those of you who are joining us remotely around the world. It's wonderful to be here. Very honored to be leading this discussion today. I am Becky Anderson. For those of you who don't know me, I am the managing editor of CNN in Abu Dhabi, which is our Middle East and Gulf programming hub, and the host of Connect the World with Becky Anderson on a daily basis from headquarters. My guest today needs very little introduction. Her Highness Sheikha Latifa bint Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum is a powerful figure helping to shape this city as a global hub for culture and creativity. Now, she joined the Culture and Arts Authority back in 2008 and was appointed chairperson of the authority in 2019, and by all accounts is turbocharging the authority's ambitions through a series of innovative plans aimed at nurturing both local and international talent. Well, today, here, I want to explore the creative potential that exists here in Dubai, around the region, and the steps being taken to foster and retain that talent. We'll also discuss Dubai's ability to attract creative individuals and enterprises from around the world. These are crucial aims for the Emirates' vision as it seeks to become a global creative capital by the middle of this decade. Never a small ambition here. If you live in Dubai, you will know that. Dubai, of course, is already a global hub for business, for commerce, and for tourism. So we will talk today about the opportunities and indeed the challenges. Her Highness will talk about how Dubai intends to expand the cultural and creative sectors, their accessibility, their inclusivity, and their diversity, and ultimately rank them among the most important economic industries here in Dubai. That is the heart of today's session. The woman with the answers to many of those questions is Sheikha Latifa. Great music, great introduction. Thank you. Thank you for joining us, and thanks for giving me the opportunity today to lead this discussion. We are going to talk about the authority and the work of the authority that you lead, its role and your plans today. But before we do that, I just want our audience to get a sense of your journey, your experience, and why you see culture, creativity, and innovation as essential elements to Dubai's success and progress. You haven't shied away from working at the coalface, as I like to say in my business, getting your hands dirty, so to speak. Talk to us about your journey.
Well, first of all, Becky, I would just like to thank the World Conference on Creative Economy for having me here. And I want to say that I'm very happy and humbled to be among the top leaders speaking about the creative economy and the future of creative economies in the region and in the world. My journey was a very interesting one. I mean, I came into the cultural industry quite by chance. I've graduated as a business major with a focus on marketing. But to me, creativity has always had a special place in my heart. I've done my art GCSEs. And for as far back as I remember, I've always loved drawing and painting. And I've been lucky to grow up in a family that encourages having so many interests and so many passions. And I remember sketching from a very young age and running up to my father to show him my sketches, which I'm sure weren't that good at the time. But he always encouraged me to keep going. So even pursuing my higher education in business, I always had a special place for creativity and culture in my heart. And I remember having the opportunity to join the Dubai Culture and Arts Authority when it was still in the beginning of its inception. It wasn't even announced yet. And the organization, because it was pretty new, it operated somewhat like a startup, where everybody had to jump in and do everything. And you're right in saying, yes, I had to get my hands dirty. I had to learn the ropes as I went along. And to be honest, a lot of the time I didn't know what I was doing. But I had to learn as I went along. And this is the beauty of working in Dubai. When you have an entity in the government sector operating as an entity in the private sector, there's so much you can learn from that, and so many skills you can gain. And I ended up setting up the marketing department because there was nobody there. And I just went from there.
You describe it as having somewhat of a sort of tech startup kind of atmosphere, and I want to talk to you about that, because I know that there's still, you've still got this kind of atmosphere which is, we can always do better. We are always sort of, looking to the next opportunity. And alongside that sort of startup mentality, there's often the story that goes, you've got to make some big mistakes before you're successful. And I think we should talk about perhaps what some of those mistakes have been going forward. But clearly you weren't gifted this job. You've been around for some time, and you're now leading the authority. Your father, your dad, Sheikh Mohammed, recently ratified the UAE's 10-year national strategy for the CCI, the cultural and creative industries, which includes, and many of our audience here today and around the world will have read in here, it includes a raft of projects and initiatives aimed at raising the contribution that the sector provides for the UAE to some 5% of GDP. Crucially, this is in partnership with the private sector. Now, you are a government entity. You've set a very clear path on how Dubai Culture aims to execute on that vision, how you embed yourselves within the wider sort of story. So let's talk about that. I'm particularly interested about how the last 18 months of COVID and the damage that the pandemic wrought on the sector has helped inform you and your team, and you always talk about how talented your team is, how it's helped inform you and the team as you built this new strategy. Can you just explain?
Well, just to give you a bit of context, Becky, I became chairman in 2019. 6 months later, the lockdowns happened. We weren't expecting it. We had so many big plans. But we always embrace challenges in Dubai, and that's how we were taught to operate. Of course, the first concern I had was, first of all, our internal teams and their well-being, and the creatives in Dubai and their livelihoods. But thankfully, in Dubai, our leadership has invested very early on in different sectors, very heavily. And because of our leadership's investment in the digital industry, we were ready to go online, in record time once the lockdowns happened. So our teams very successfully migrated online. All our work happened online. And it was very easy to continue the work that we did. And then we had to move our focus onto the creative industry and the creatives operating within it. And the first thing we decided to do as a team was to really explore what's going on in the industry and what's going on with those creatives. So we set up a number of online meetings where we gathered all the information we could from them. We had very open and honest conversations with them. And we looked at their challenges in the short run and the long run. Because if you remember, we didn't know how long the lockdowns would go on for. And we gathered very insightful information at that time. And that's when I realized that our creatives in Dubai were very resilient and very willing to change the way they work to accommodate to the new situation. As soon as we were out of the lockdown, I started conducting majlis meetings with those creatives. And this is something that I've been doing for a while. I mean, you've been here a very long time, Becky, and you know that majlises are a huge part of our culture. And I realized that instead of sitting with them in a meeting setting and having to sit with them in an open majlis setting, it encouraged them to speak. It encourages them to share their concerns very openly. It encourages them to give us insights on how we can help them. And fortunately, a lot of the feedback that we've received during those majlises have physically gone into our strategies that we've formed. So by sitting with the people in the industry, for knowing what's going on the ground, we were able to form strategies that actually addressed their concerns, that actually removed obstacles from their path. And we are now working on laying the foundations in terms of legislature, in terms of regulations, to really ease doing business in the creative sector.
And I've been to one of those majlises, so
Yes.
I can tell you, folks, that they are extremely open and extremely honest. I mean, people really do bring their problems. They bring solutions. We talked about the challenges that the industry faced, not just during COVID, but the challenges that the industry will face here going forward. I'm fascinated to hear, and I know our audience will be as well. What did you identify as the biggest challenges for operators here, for the industry here, and explain how the initiatives that you have launched will help overcome some of these challenges? Let's drill down a little bit here.
Absolutely. So one of the biggest challenges that we've heard from our creatives is the fact that legislation is not helping them work smoothly. It's not helping them set up their businesses in a very streamlined manner. Now, fortunately, working in Dubai, and I work in the government of Dubai, and I'm sure you know how we operate. Things happen very organically, and they happen very fast, and we're lucky with that. I mean, the creative sector has the full backing of the government. And thankfully, working within the authority, I have the full support of my dad and my brothers. And I don't think this happens anywhere else in the world. But I get calls from my dad's office and from my brothers saying, you've launched this strategy. What are you doing with it? What initiatives are coming out? What are you announcing next? What support do you need from us? So when we started working on legislation, we had to look at all the licensing that creatives, had to choose from. And it was very challenging for them. It wasn't a wide variety of licenses that reflected their actual work. So the teams went back and they worked with different entities in the government, and they looked at a lot of benchmarking opportunities to see what the best way we can do with this. And it was a very quick turnaround where we were able, in the government, to change the licensing to help creatives, set up much easier. That was the biggest challenge, and now we have a platform on Invest in Dubai for creatives, where they can obtain a license in a fairly fast manner.
Well, the advert is 7 minutes.
It is. Yes.
Is that for real?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Okay. I just had to ask because it did seem extraordinary. Look, this is fascinating. You have willingly let us know that you have a good seat at the table,
Yes.
which you says empowers you and clearly does to get things done. I want to talk about a couple of these programs because, as you say, this week Dubai unveiled a new program which will help creatives establish businesses on a platform within minutes. It's called Creative's Journey Initiative. Just explain how that will actually work.
So it's on a platform called Invest in Dubai. And if you would like to set up a business in Dubai in any field, in any industry, you go onto the website and you can obtain a license for what you're doing. Now, we recently launched the creative side of that website. So if a creative is willing to start a business in Dubai, all they need to do is go on the platform, submit the paperwork, sign whatever they need to sign, and they can get the license within minutes.
Have you tested this out?
We have. Within the team, we have.
So it is minutes?
Yes.
You promise. Okay, so therein lies one of the initiatives that you've devised from the authorities' work that you've been doing. The Al-Khaz Creative Zone, also a central part of the initiative to make Dubai, to really make Dubai a global hub for the creative economy by sort of, mid-decade. For those who aren't familiar with Al-Khaz, just explain what's going on there and what you believe the sort of wider value is to the vision.
So I'll give you a bit of background information on how that project came about. Again, as a result of our majlises with the creative industry, we realized that there were so many common challenges between the different sectors. And we formulated the Dubai Creative Economy strategy that my dad recently launched and approved. Part of that strategy is creating a creative hub, which we felt Al-Khaz was already ready for, because it's an industrial area in Dubai that has been taken over by creatives in a way. It has a lot of potential to grow, and we felt it was a great pilot project to implement all the initiatives that we wanted to help creatives. So we are planning to create a creative zone where creatives can live and work and thrive as a process. We are laying the foundations within this zone as a pilot, and in terms of licensing, in terms of regulations, and hopefully when it is successful, it can be replicated in different areas across Dubai.
Which brings me to my next question, because as I was considering that area and the idea that this has been a very organic area that is, and it's really just been inspired by the work that people here in the sector have been doing. It did occur to me that you must be asking yourself, and certainly you will have been asked by others, how you ensure that the authority as a government entity doesn't crowd out creatives who are, by their very nature, disruptors. I mean, I know you talk about enabling rather than sort of controlling, and I think the audience here needs to hear about that.
So when I first took over the authority, we went back and we looked at the mandate of establishment. And the actual role of the authority is to enable and support and promote creativity and creatives. Whereas before we were operating as an operator more. And then COVID helped so much, Becky. COVID made us, take a step back and reflect. And we were able to slow down a bit. We had so much to do, so we couldn't slow down a lot. But we were able to slow down a bit and think of our role within the industry. And the best way to describe our role is we are the entity that should be enabling the sector through its creatives. We do not want to do everything, and we cannot do everything. What we do is we find the right partners in the industry to achieve our collective goal. We are there to support and promote those creatives. We are there to enable through legislation, through being the voice of creatives with the government, through setting the standard, putting strategies together, and putting those strategies into effect as a team within the industry.
It's interesting for those who don't live here, I think it's interesting to point out that Dubai isn't the only place with a sort of thriving creative and cultural sector. Sharjah is a very successful emirate to the north of here, which is had a very successful sort of government-run sector now for some time, very heavily sort of focused on institutions and indeed on book fairs, etc. And then there's Abu Dhabi as well, which again with the Louvre and the upcoming Guggenheim, the Abu Dhabi Art Fair as well. I wonder, as you angle to ensure that Dubai is a really successful emirate with this sector, are you competing or collaborating with these other emirates? I mean, is there enough for everyone, I guess, is the question.
Yeah. The way we see it, Becky, is every emirate complements the rest of the UAE. And together we're telling a very complete story of the entire UAE. And like you mentioned, the different emirates like Sharjah is very heavily involved with literature, and they're very well known for that, and they do it really well. Abu Dhabi, our capital, is very well known for bringing the biggest names in museums, and they do it really well. Dubai is now focused on the creative economy and building the creative scene from the foundation. So I believe we complement each other very well. And competition is always healthy, not just within the cities, but also in the region. Because if every single city thrives to do their best for their creatives, then as a collective, as a region, we will thrive. And as a region, we will be a safe place for creatives to thrive. So I think it's a bit of both. And it's a very healthy competition.
You're just talking about the region there. I think it's important to discuss the opportunity for talent around the region, the opportunity for homegrown talent here as well, and this opportunity to attract talent from outside of this region as well. Dubai's position as a melting pot of cultures, I think, is often overlooked to a certain extent. Before we talk about how important the regional assets are and those away from here, do you think the creative economy to a certain extent has always been part of Dubai's DNA?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, since I joined the authority, I've realized that we've always had a thriving creative economy in Dubai. We've had, the cultural industry has always grown organically without, any government intervention for the past 2 decades. We have been founded to support this growth and to direct it in the best way possible and to present more opportunities for this industry to thrive. So it's always been there, and we have very established Emirati artists that have gained global recognition on their own merit. But now is the time to really work together and collaborate to bring the best potential out of this industry.
One of the other initiatives that you have launched of late is a Dubai framework for cultural statistics. Forgive me, I realise that is somewhat of a mouthful, but it is important because it speaks to something that I know was discussed here yesterday as policy and legislation and sort of frameworks were being discussed at the opening of this conference. And the importance of harvesting data, of benchmarking, of ensuring that data is at one's fingertips. Look, when you have the sort of targets that you have here, it doesn't matter whether you have a seat at the table with dad or your brothers. I know they are breathing down your neck to a certain extent. So, the ambition is really, really high. How does that benchmarking opportunity, how does that mouthful of initiative, as it were, what's the nub of it, and how's that going to help foster the ambition here?
So, Becky, when I first joined as chairman, we were asked by my dad to set the new direction for the Culture and Arts Authority within a month.
Wow.
Our biggest challenge with that was the lack of data that there was. If data existed, people didn't know how to aggregate it. And it was the responsibility for aggregating that data was dispersed between different entities. And it was such a struggle to get all this information to form the basis of, our current situation as opposed to where we want to go. So the teams worked tirelessly to come up with a framework, and they used the UNESCO framework as a basis, as well as the Eurostat numbers as a basis, and they adapted it to what's best for Dubai and what makes sense for Dubai. So we came up with a framework that is called the Dubai, the Culture Statistical Framework. It is a mouthful for me.
It is a mouthful, there you go.
But now this will help us really get the numbers we need and understand our current situation and understand where we stand within the region. And I think this is the first framework within the UAE. And we will, I promised our Minister of Culture yesterday, Noura, that I would share it with her so we can support, data collection throughout the UAE.
Well, in her opening speech yesterday, Noura Al-Kabi, who is the Minister for Culture and Youth here, she made a point of saying, and I quote her here, because I thought this was really important that we discuss this, we need to ensure the long-term sustainability of the cultural and creative sectors. I think what you've just been talking to very much speaks to this. And she went on to say the linkage between the industries and the UN Sustainable Development Goals is clear. A thriving cultural economy is also an unquestionable guarantee for urban recovery and for growth. I know that you will agree with her words. How do you ensure sustainability going forward?
By laying the right foundations, by working on the laws and regulations, by making it easier for creatives to set up, to work, to live, to produce their work and to sell. By looking at the whole supply chain and the whole value chain and making sure everything works seamlessly. I believe that's the only way to do it, laying the foundations, even if we have to do it now. And especially with COVID, I mean, the world is changing. Nothing will stay the same. Even the way people experience culture is changing. Even the way people, share their work is changing. So taking that into consideration, we want to lay the right foundations for creatives to take off.
So let's talk about who those creatives are. What this sector will look like going forward. I give you a magic wand or a glass ball, and I say, what is Dubai going to look like? What will the message be? Who will be here in 10 years' time, if you get this right? And what will the sector look like? Just describe your personal and sort of public ambition here.
What the sector would look like, Becky, I honestly don't know. But I'm excited to see what the potential could be. I think there's a lot of potential to grow. My responsibility is to nurture the most creative generation, to have them have the opportunity to work alongside amazing talents from around the world, to give our creatives all the opportunity to grow and thrive. I'm still learning. We're still learning in the industry. And especially with the new situation, I'm very excited to see what we can do with the industry.
Given the recent debate around the 3D replica of Michelangelo's David, you won't be surprised that we're going to have this conversation on whether or not the limited view of the statue's nudity is a form of censorship or a form of artistic impression. Because this speaks to what the sector will look like going forward and who will be here. Whichever side of the debate you stand on with that, this has once again raised the issue of art and censorship here. So I'm just going to ask you, is certain content censored here?
If you think about Dubai, Becky, and we're privileged to have over 180 nationalities living and thriving in Dubai. And the way Dubai and its citizens have always been, I mean, I remember, I'll take you back a little bit. I remember in the older generations, I know people who are bilingual and even trilingual because they learn to speak the languages of people who came to work here. Where anywhere else around the world, it's the other way around. So whoever lives in Dubai, they come here and they feel safe because they can retain their culture, they can retain their religious beliefs, they can retain their language, and they don't have to let go of any of that to blend with the culture and feel accepted. So as a people, we respect people for who they are. Now, one of the pillars of our culture that we value is respect and acceptance. And in everything we do, we make sure that everybody who lives within Dubai feels safe and secure and feels proud of their culture and their backgrounds and their beliefs. And it's not a matter of censorship, in my opinion. It's a matter of common courtesy. Whatever we do in Dubai, we do not seek to offend any of these cultures living in Dubai. And that's the way I view it, Becky.
So artists and shows, for example, to a certain extent will need to navigate what are, I think you're describing as cultural boundaries here, to a certain extent. Ultimately, is there anybody who isn't welcome?
Not at all. I mean, we welcome all creative expression, and we welcome, different opinions, and we value them. There is a platform for anyone who wants to express their creativity. And obviously, good art provokes an opinion and a feeling. But I don't believe that art should be provocative for the sake of being provocative. I believe that everyone has a platform. However, it's a matter of whether or not that platform or that creative expression would be accepted by the people or not.
I promised the audience that we would talk about this sort of atmosphere that you feel here of startups to a certain extent. And we talked earlier on about how sometimes the most successful startups have made some pretty terrific mistakes, but they've learned from them. What do you think the biggest mistakes that you've made at this point are? I mean, if there are any. and what have you learned?
I hope I haven't made any yet. However, we're at the beginning of our journey. And if we do make mistakes, we are fortunate to be in a position where we're flexible enough to fix our journey or fix our course and rectify. And I remember during my presentation to my dad, when I first presented the new direction, I actually made this point and I said, I want our teams to be flexible enough and brave enough to take chances and to even make mistakes. And what he said was, you're right. Because we're in a position where we don't know what the future would be. And we would like our creatives to be pioneers. And to be a pioneer, you have to be able to make mistakes. And you have to have that sort of safety net and flexibility to be able to do that. So to answer your question, I really hope I haven't. But if I do, I wouldn't be afraid to say it and change course.
Take me forward. You said you're not quite sure what the sector will look like, but I wonder whether there's a model that you're looking at. I mean, a city, for example, that you want to resemble, and will this be a city of, for example, of more art fairs, of more museums? I mean, I just want to get a sense for those who may have real ambition to come here, both from the region and around the world. What will its shape be? I mean, I come from London, for example, although I call this country my home now, having been here for nearly a decade. But London, I think of the Tates and the National Galleries and the West End, for example, and Paris has its own sort of flavour. What will the shape of Dubai be?
So I believe the best way to achieve a successful city in the future is to have a balance of everything. The vision that has been cascaded down from our leadership, from my dad, is that he would like to see Dubai as a global cultural destination, just like it's a global business destination. And that's the vision that we're working on now. We would like to see, things happen very organically. That's why when I say I don't know what shape it will take, because anything is possible. We are relying heavily on boosting the creative economy, because creativity, as you know, or a thriving creative industry contributes to so many different other industries. Without creativity, you won't have good products and services. And also, Becky, the UAE is now working on diversifying its economy, and it has been for a while. And a strong and robust creative industry is a very big part of that.
And that creativity and the investments that it brings in, the headline is it's good for the economy. The sort of below the line is, it's this sector that creates and grows the intangibles, that stuff you can't touch and feel, but what makes a city so special, the speed at which you need to achieve some of these ambitions, primarily because there's a strategy there that needs executing on. But it will take time, won't it? I mean, you can execute on the strategy, you can ensure you're going in the right direction. It will then need, as a city, time to breathe, correct?
Right.
Time to adapt.
Yes.
Oh, hello. Somebody telling us we have to stop. I don't think so. We've got a few minutes left. It's that flavour, isn't it?
Yes.
That's really important. What are you hoping for?
I think as we lay down the foundations, and once we have everything in our strategies in place, then the city would be ready to take off on its own. And creatives will be ready to grow organically. They already do now, and our role is to support that. But we need the right infrastructure, we need the right foundations, we need the right, laws and regulations in place to support that kind of growth. And once that happens, I can take a step back and breathe.
Take your foot off the pedal somewhat. So you've accelerated the opportunity for people to physically get themselves set up here. You've enabled the platforms that will allow people to identify what it is that needs them to operate. You've generated interest in and support for the creative zone. What's your message then to those who are watching today in the international space, those who aren't with us here today? What's your message about why they should come? Why Dubai?
Because we care. And we do everything in our power to make it easier for anyone in Dubai to succeed. And there's a saying, we're always happy to see people succeed. And I think that's a huge difference in Dubai. When you go out of your way to make sure there's a collective success around you, I think that speaks very powerfully to your goal. And there's a very altruistic ambition that has been cascaded down from our leadership. And I keep reminding the teams of this as much as I can, which is the reason why we go to work every day in the government of Dubai is for the happiness of the people of Dubai. So when you have a government who has that goal in mind, the happiness of every citizen, of every resident, of every visitor, I think only good comes out of that.
And let's be clear, the ambition for this sector is to provide significant value. So whilst that message is a very altruistic one, I mean there is hard work to be done to ensure that you can
100%.
Execute on the 5% growth. I've just got a couple of minutes left, but I just want to sort of wind this up, and it's been fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm reminded by the words of Audrey Azoulay yesterday, UNESCO's Director General, who said it's time to get serious when discussing culture's contribution to society and to economies. I'm sure you echo her words.
100%. I mean, we've been working diligently on the Dubai Creative Economy strategy because it impacts the city and the country very significantly economically. But it also has, it has a lot of value in terms of, happiness in a city. And we've seen that very clearly during COVID. We've noticed how people turn to culture and turn to creativity, for their sanity. So it's beneficial any way you look at it. And like I mentioned earlier, it really boosts other sectors. And it's been great doing what we do, seeing that people are now noticing the value of the creative and cultural industries on the success and growth of a city.
And these are visions. Are you seeing the numbers? I mean, are we seeing significant uptick in licenses being?
Yeah. Well, I haven't looked at the numbers of the licensing yet. But however, while forming our strategies, we have a certain vision. But in doing the research, we realized that the actual numbers exceeded our estimates. So we had to increase our targets as well.
Never easy. Finally, I just want to ask you, this is a big job. And there's a big responsibility here. I've spoken to you before. You are the first person to applaud the team that you work with. You've said a number of times that you are nothing without the team that you are working with. But ultimately, getting this right is your responsibility. Right. What's keeping you awake at night, apart from the kids, of course?
I mean, honestly, Becky, I love what I do. And I'm very excited to be working in this industry. It's such an exciting industry. Things change every day, and you have to be on your feet to get things right. And I feel very grateful, and I feel lucky to be working on a sector that I get to see, progress and grow. I think it's excitement more than anything that keeps me up, but I really love what I do. And I see that in my team as well. I get emails in the middle of the night, I get messages in the middle of the night and on weekends, but we all love what we do.
Fantastic. Well, listen, I've loved this. This has been a great conversation. Thank you, Sheikha Latifa.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and thank you for joining us today here in Dubai and wherever you are watching in the world. The very best of luck.
Thank you very much.
It's going to be a busy time.
It's been a lovely conversation, Becky. Thank you.
Thank you.